There are few peoples on Azeroth as misunderstood as the Tauren. To many, they are simply the gentle giants of the Horde, peaceful hunters who value honour above conquest, wise shamans who commune with the spirits, and steadfast warriors who fight only when every other path has failed. But that image tells only a fraction of their story. Long before the Horde ever crossed the Great Sea, before orcs drank the blood of demons, before humans built kingdoms or night elves raised glittering cities, the ancestors of the Tauren wandered the untamed Azeroth. They hunted colossal beasts beneath endless skies. They spoke with wild gods. They fought beside legendary heroes during the greatest war the world had ever known, and they witnessed civilizations rise and disappear into myth. Their history stretches back tens of thousands of years, into an age where fact and legend intertwined so completely that even the Tauren themselves cannot always distinguish one from the other. Some of what survives is history, some is oral tradition, some is sacred mythology passed from elder to child for countless generations. Yet, within those stories lies the heart of the Tauren. Tonight, we begin at the very beginning, not with the Horde, not with Khan Bloodhoof, not even with the War of the Ancients. Instead, we journey back to a time before written history, when Azeroth itself was still young. Long before any mortal race walked Azeroth, the world belonged to the elemental chaos. Fire consumed forests before they could grow, earth shattered beneath endless earthquakes, storms raged without end. The old gods ruled through monstrous servants while the elemental lords waged eternal war. Life struggled to exist. Then everything changed. The Titans arrived. The colossal world shapers battled the old gods' empire and imprisoned the elemental lords deep beneath the world. Their servants, the Titan Forged, reshaped mountains, carved rivers, stabilized the continents, and transformed a broken world into one capable of supporting life. Yet, the Titans did not remain forever. When their great work was complete, they departed into the great dark beyond. But Azeroth was not abandoned. Life flourished in ways no Titan had fully planned. Forests spread across the continents, the seas teemed with creatures, and amongst the earliest and most powerful beings to emerge were entities later known as the Wild Gods. Unlike the Titan Keepers, the Wild Gods were not architects, they were guardians, living embodiments of nature itself. Each represented an aspect of the natural world. Some ruled to hunt, others watched over forests, some embodied strength, others wisdom. Many races would eventually worship them. The Trolls revered Lower, the Night Elves honoured Ancients. The Tauren simply knew them as powerful spirits deserving respect. Amongst these beings were majestic creatures whose names would echo throughout history. The Great Wolf Goldring, the White Stag Malorn, the Mighty Bear Ursok, Ashamain, mistress of great cats. To mortals, they appeared immortal. In truth, even they could die. Unlike ordinary creatures, many wild gods possessed the remarkable ability to return to the Emerald Dream, the spiritual reflection of Azeroth where nature remained forever pure. For the earliest Tauren, these were teachers, protectors, sometimes even companions. No race maintained a closer spiritual relationship with nature. Ask a Tauren where their people came from, and you will not receive a historical lecture. You will hear a story, because to the Tauren, truth is carried throughout memory rather than books. According to Tauren tradition, before the world was filled with life, there existed the Earth Mother. She wandered the newborn world, bringing life wherever her feet touched the soil. Grass followed her footsteps, trees reached towards the sky, animals emerged from valleys and rivers. Despite creating beauty wherever she travelled, the Earth Mother became lonely. She looked into the heavens. From one eye came Anshi, the sun, brilliant, warm, a beacon of courage and strength. From her other eye came Munsha, the moon, gentle, wise, compassionate. Together, the twins illuminated creation. The Earth Mother then fashioned the Tauren, charging them with caring for the living world. but darkness entered creation. The Earth Mother's children became separated. Muncher wandered the night searching endlessly for their lost mother. Anshi blazed across the heavens, hoping his light would one day reveal her. The Earth Mother herself had vanished from the world. Some traditions say she sacrificed herself. Others believe she sleeps beneath the land. Still others claim she became the world itself. Whatever the truth, the Tauren believe every mountain, every river, every plain carries part of her spirit. And because of that belief, the land is sacred, not owned, not conquered, protected. One of the most fascinating aspects of Tauren culture is that Blizzard has intentionally never confirmed whether the Earth Mother literally exists. Unlike the Titans, whose existence is undeniable, or the Old Gods, or the Naru, the Earth Mother occupies a unique place. She may be a true cosmic entity, she may be an ancient spirit remembered imperfectly, or she may simply represent the living soul of Azeroth through a metaphor. This ambiguity makes Tauren spiritually remarkably realistic. Real cultures often preserve ancient truths throughout symbolic stories rather than historical records. The Tauren do the exact same. Whether or not every detail happened exactly as described is almost beside the point, because these stories shaped how generations viewed the world, and belief changes history just surely as fact. Long before kingdoms existed, the ancestors of Morin Tauren roamed central Kalimdor. Immense plains stretched farther than the eye could see. Towering creatures thundered across open grasslands. The Tauren followed migrating herds, living as hunters rather than farmers. Unlike many civilizations, they never sought to dominate nature. Instead, they adapted to its rhythms. When the herds moved, they moved. When the seasons changed, their camps shifted. Their greatest strength was unity. Every hunt depended on cooperation. Every child belonged to the tribe. Every elder preserved a memory. These traditions would survive unchanged for thousands of years, long after empires rose and fell, long after entire races disappeared. The Tauren remained exactly who they had always been: hunters, storytellers, guardians. As generations passed, the Tauren spread across ancient Kalimdor. Different tribes developed unique customs while maintaining spiritual beliefs. Some became exceptional hunters, others mastered herbal medicine, others forged deep relationships with elemental spirits. Leadership emerged through wisdom rather than strength. A chieftain served because the tribe trusted them, not because they possessed absolute power. This philosophy became central to Tauren society. Strength existed to protect, not to dominate. Honour mattered more than victory, patience outweighed ambition. These ideals would later astonish Thrall when he first encountered Khan Bloodhoof, but by then they were already thousands of years old. While the Tauren wandered the plains, other civilizations were also beginning to emerge. The Trolls built mighty empires. The Night Elves had not yet risen. The Well of Eternity radiated unimaginable arcane power across the heart of Kalimdor. The world remained young. Magic flowed freely. Wild gods walked openly amongst mortals. Heroes became legends within their own lifetimes. It was an age unlike any other that followed. For the Tauren, it represented a golden era. The wild gods still answered prayers directly. Nature remained largely untouched. The great hunts were plentiful. The Earth Mother's gifts seemed endless. Yet, even in paradise, change was coming. Far to the south, amongst the wandering Tauren, cultural differences slowly began to emerge. Over centuries, then millennia, those differences would create entirely new peoples. The Yongle, the Tonka, and eventually the High Mountain Tauren. The history of the Tauren was never the story of a single people. It was the story of one family that followed different paths across an ever-changing world. And those paths were about to lead them into one of the greatest conflicts in Azeroth's history. For thousands of years, the ancestors of the Tauren lived as they always had. They wandered the vast plains of ancient Kalimdor, following the great herds across an untamed world. They hunted only what they needed, honoured the spirits of the land, and lived in harmony with the wild gods that watched over Azeroth. while other civilizations sought power through conquest or magic, and a wise elder was more valued than a wealthy ruler. A hunter who respected his prey was honoured more than one who killed for glory. The Earth Mother had given them a world of abundance, and it was their sacred duty to preserve that balance. For countless generations, this way of life endured. Then everything changed. A war unlike anything Azeroth had ever seen erupted across the world. Demons poured through a portal from the twisting nether. Entire cities burned. Ancient forests were reduced to ash. The greatest empire of age stood on the brink of annihilation. The conflict would become known as the War of the Ancients. It reshaped every civilization on Azeroth, and for the Tauren, it produced one of the greatest heroes in their history. His name was Huln Highmountain. Nearly 10,000 years before the opening of the Dark Portal, Kalimdor was a single massive continent. At its heart lay the Well of Eternity, a vast lake of arcane energy that radiated unimaginable magic power. The well transformed the world around it. Forests flourished, mountains rose, countless creatures evolved under its influence. Among those forever changed were the Dark Trolls, who settled near its shores. Over generations, exposure to the well transformed them into a new people, the Kaldorei, or Night Elves. Under the guidance of their beloved Queen Ashara, the Night Elves built one of the most magnificent civilizations Azeroth had ever known. Their cities glistened with arcane architecture, their scholars mastered powerful magic, their empire stretched across nearly all of ancient Kalimdor. To many, they appeared unstoppable, yet beneath the surface, corruption had already taken root. Far from Queen Ashara's shining capital, the Tauren remained largely untouched by the political struggles of the Night Elves. They were hunters, not empire builders. One of those hunters was Huln. Even amongst the Tauren, Huln was extraordinary. He possessed immense physical strength, unmatched skill with spear and bow, and an unwavering sense of humility. He never sought glory. He never claimed to be greater than others. Instead, he earned respect through courage and wisdom. These qualities drew the attention of one of Azeroth's oldest guardians, the wild god Cenarius. Cenarius had long maintained friendships with many of the races that respected nature. The Tauren, perhaps more than any other people, embodied the ideals he cherished. According to Tauren tradition, Huln encountered Cenarius during one of his journeys through the wilds. Rather than fearing the mighty demigod, Huln greeted him with respect. Cenarius recognized something remarkable with the young hunter, not merely strength, but character. He gifted Huln with wisdom, guidance, and eventually entrusted him with one of the most legendary weapons in Tauren history, the Eagle Spear, forged with the blessing of the Eagle Spirit Onara. The weapon was said to strike supernatural speed and precision. More importantly, it symbolized Huln's role as a protector rather than a conqueror. As the Burning Legion's invasion intensified, scattered defenders slowly united. The resistance included unlikely allies: Night Elves, Earthen, Wild Gods, Dragons, Keepers, even tribes that had never before interacted with one another. Huln answered the call. Leading brave Tauren hunters northward, he joined the coalition fighting to save the world. For many Tauren, this was the first time they'd marched beyond their traditional homelands for a cause that affected all life. It was not conquest that motivated them, it was duty. If the Legion succeeded, there'd be no planes left to protect, no Earth Mother, no future. One of the defining moments of Huln's legend came during the struggle against the Legion's aerial forces. Mounted upon the great eagle spirit Onara, Huln wielded the Eagle Spear against flying demons, striking enemies that ordinary soldiers could barely reach. Stories described him as descending from the skies like a bolt of lightning, piercing monstrous commanders before they could rally their armies. Whether every tale is literally true is impossible to know, as with much of Tauren history, centuries of oral tradition have elevated historical events into legend. Yet Huln had been portrayed as one of the greatest mortal champions of the entire war. His reputation was well deserved. Perhaps Huln's greatest contribution came during the battle surrounding the Titan artifact known as the Hammer of Khaz'goroth. The Legion sought powerful relics capable of securing victory, Protecting these artifacts became essential. When demons launched a massive assault, Hulm and his warriors held the line despite the overwhelming odds. Wave after wave of demons crashed against the defenders. Many fell. Still, they fought. The Tauren refused to yield. Their courage brought precious time for the resistance to regroup and ultimately prevent the Legion from claiming one of the Titan's greatest relics. It was exactly the kind of sacrifice the Tauren valued most, not dying gloriously, living honourably, and when necessary, giving everything so others might survive. Ultimately, the resistance succeeded. The portal collapsed, the Legion's invasion was halted, Sargeras was denied entry into Azeroth, but victory came at an unimaginable price. The Well of Eternity imploded. Its destruction shattered every continent of Kalimdor. Mountains split apart. Entire forests vanished beneath the sea. Ancient cities disappeared forever. This cataclysm became known as the Sundering. No race emerged unchanged. The Tauren's endless hunting grounds were torn apart. Migration routes vanished overnight. Communities became isolated from one another. Families were separated by oceans that had not existed the day before. The world Hulm had fought to save no longer existed. A new age had begun. Few mortals can claim to have altered the course of history, but Hulm High Mountain did. Without his courage, countless lives would have been lost. Without the sacrifices of the Tauren hunters, the Resistance might have failed at critical moments. Without the unity shown during the War of the Ancients, Azeroth itself may have fallen before Sargeras ever set foot upon its surface. Yet perhaps Hulm's greatest legacy was not military, it was cultural. He proved that strength and compassion could exist together, that humility could stand beside greatness, that true heroes fight not for fame, but for those who cannot protect themselves. These ideals would define the High Mountain tribes for the next 10,000 years. Meanwhile, far to the south, the remaining Tauren continued their nomadic existence across the shattered plains of central Kalimdor. They did not know it yet, but another tragedy was already taking form, one born not of demons, but of vengeance, corruption, and an ancient family torn apart. The children of Cenarius would soon make a choice that unleashed one of the greatest enemies to the Tauren, the Centaur, and with their birth, the Age of Peace would finally come to the end. The War of the Ancients was over. The Burning Legion had been driven back to the Twisting Nether. The portal that threatened to bring Sargeras into Azeroth had been destroyed, and the world had been saved. But victory came at a cost. The Azeroth that emerged from the conflict was almost unrecognisable. Ancient kingdoms had vanished beneath the sea. Mountain ranges had been ripped apart. Entire ecosystems had disappeared overnight. The single, unified continent of Kalimdor had been shattered into the continents and islands that future generations would know. For Night Elves, it marked the end of an empire. For dragons, it was the beginning of an age of watchfulness. For the Tauren, it was the beginning of 10,000 years of separation. Some would climb into the mountains, others would remain upon the plains, some would endure unbearable cold. Others would adapt to the lands for endless grass. Though all descended from the ancient Tauren, time and distance would slowly transform them into distant peoples, each carrying the same heritage in different ways. This is the story of how one people became many. Before the Sundering, travel across Kalimdor had been difficult, but possible. The ancestors of the Tauren wandered enormous territories in pursuit for migrating herds. Trade, storytelling, marriages, and alliance connected tribes across hundreds of miles. The Great Hunt was more than survival, it was the thread that held the Tauren together. When the Well of Eternity collapsed, that thread was cut. Earthquakes split the land, volcanoes erupted without warning, rivers changed course, ancient forests disappeared beneath tidal waves. What had once been familiar became utterly alien. Many Tauren tribes were simply gone. Some were swallowed by the sea, others vanished in collapsing valleys. Still, more became isolated behind impassable mountains or vast stretches of newly formed wilderness. There was no single moment when the Tauren realised their people would be divided. Instead, it happened slowly. Each generation searched a little farther for lost relatives. Each season Fewer familiar faces returned home. Stories of distant cousins became memories, memories became legends, and eventually legends became myths. Amongst those forever changed by the Sundering were the followers of the Huln High Mountain. During the War of the Ancients, Huln had fought beside some of the greatest heroes in Azeroth history. His courage earned him the respect of the dragons, demigods, and night elves alike. After the war, his people settled within the towering peaks that would bear his name. These mountains were unlike the rolling plains their ancestors had known. Towering cliffs replaced open grasslands, narrow passes replaced endless horizons. Game animals were fewer, but the land offered security. Here, the descendants of Huln built a culture shaped by stone, snow, and sky. Those mighty moose became trusted companions. The eagle remained a sacred symbol throughout the legacy of Onara. Family lineages were marked by magnificent antlers. Each branching pattern became a visible reminder of ancestry and honour. Though isolated, the High Mountain Tauren never considered themselves a new race. They were still Tauren. They had simply become guardians of a different corner of the Earth Mother's creation. While Huln's descendants adapted to the mountain life, the majority of the Tauren remained upon central Kalimdor. The world around them had changed dramatically, yet their philosophy remained remarkably consistent. They continued following migrating Kodo herds, they hunted according to ancient customs, they honoured the spirits of the land. The Earth Mother's teachings remained at the centre of every tribe. To outsiders, their lives appeared simple. In truth, survival demanded extraordinary skill. Without permanent cities, every tribe needed intimate knowledge of seasonal weather, migration routes, edible plants, dangerous predators, and sacred sites. Children learnt these lessons from the moment they could walk. History was not written, it was remembered. Every elder became a living library. Every storyteller ensured another generation carried the wisdom of those who came before. This oral tradition became one of the defining strengths of Tauren culture. Whenever disaster struck, knowledge endured. Far to the north, groups of ancient Tauren gradually migrated towards colder regions. Exactly why remains uncertain. Some legends speak of following migrating beasts, others describe generations of explorers who simply continued walking until the world itself grew cold. Whatever the reason, these wanderers eventually reached the lands where survival demanded dramatic adaptation. The winters lasted most of the year. Vegetation became scarce. Blizzards could erase entire camps within hours. To survive, these northern Tauren changed. Their bodies grew stockier, their fur became thicker, they learnt to hunt entirely different prey. Their spiritual traditions adapted to a harsher environment. Elemental forces became more immediate concerns than abundant grasslands. Over countless generations, these northern descendants became known as the Tunka. Although physically distinct, they still carried echoes of the same ancient culture that had once united every Tauren beneath the open skies of original Kalimdor. While some tribes journeyed north and others settled within High Mountain, another branch of ancient Tauren continued life in the southern reaches of Kalimdor. These people would eventually be known as the Yongul. Unlike the Tauren familiar to modern players, the Yongul developed a tougher, more militaristic culture. Life in harsher environments demanded greater resilience. Conflict over territory became more common. Their appearance gradually changed. Their horns thickened. Their physiques became more imposing. Though they retained reverence with spirits and ancestors, their society emphasized endurance and martial strength to a greater degree than their cousins on the plains. It is important to remember that this was not yet a story of separate races. These changes unfolded over thousands of years. Not a single generation awoke different from the one before it. Evolution was slow. Cultures changed gradually. With only the passing of immense stretches of time did the distinctions become unmistakable. By the middle millennia of the Sundering, the descendants of the ancient Tauren had effectively followed three different paths. The High Mountain tribes watched over sacred peaks and preserved Huln's legacy. The Plain tribes continued the nomadic traditions that would eventually produce the Bloodhoof, the Rune Totem, Sky Chaser, and many other familiar clans. the northern migrants endured frozen wastes as the Tunka. Far south, the Yongle forged their own destiny. Separated by mountains, oceans, climate and time, each believed they alone represented the continuation of ancient traditions. In truth, all of them did. Each carried a different piece of the original Tauren identity. Although they no longer walk together, they remain members of the same extended family. They simply no longer remembered one another. As centuries became millennia, contact between these distant peoples faded almost entirely. The high mountain tribes only knew fragments of the outside world. The plain tribes remembered Holm as an almost mythical ancestor. The Tonka fought simply to survive another winter. The Yongle faced challenges unique to their own lands. Without regular content, history diverged, different heroes emerged, different songs were written, different ceremonies developed, yet certain traditions endured everywhere: respect for others, reverence for ancestors, communion with the spirits, the belief that strength existed to defend rather than dominate. These shared values served as invisible threads connecting peoples who no longer knew they were related. For thousands of years after the Sundering, the Central Plains remained completely peaceful. The Tauren hunted, children grew into hunters, hunters became elders, elders became ancestors. It was not a perfect world. Predators claimed lives, nature could be unforgiving, rival tribes occasionally quarrelled, but no enemy threatened the existence of the Tauren as a whole. But that would not last. Far away, another story was unfolding. It began with Cenarius, the beloved wild god that had once mentored Holm High Mountain, and continued with his son, Zeta. It ended with a union that should never have happened. From that tragic mistake, an entirely new race would be born, savage, cruel, driven by endless hatred. They would hunt not for survival, but for slaughter. The Tauren would come to know them by a single name, the Centaur, and for the next several centuries, the plains of Kalimdor would run red with blood.